What is up everyone, my name is Wizard101 and in today's video I want to talk about the problems that I think are present within the guild system and to an extent raids in general within Wiz. Before we get started, I just want to say that 9% of you watching are not subscribed, so if you have not already, please consider leaving a like and hitting the sub button below if you'd like to see more content. It really helps me out and lets me know what content to make in the future. I'd also like to say that the opinions presented within this video are mine and mine alone, and don't represent any guild that I am a part of. So if you disagree with me, just type your arguments out here in the comments below. Don't be weird and go to my guilds I may be part of with your disagreements. And with all that being said, let's get right into the video. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the difficulty of finding a guild, more specifically a guild that could do raids semi-consistently. Many people are interested in raiding, but a lot simply can't find guilds that do so. Unless you're really involved with Wiz communities on Discord, which most of the community is not, you are going to have a very hard time finding a guild. I remember when Polaris raid came out on test initially, another content creator, Wizard Pluto, was desperately trying to find a guild but he couldn't while he was streaming at least, which particularly stood out to me as he is a known content creator, and as a creator he has the privilege of a platform, a chat that was trying to help him find a guild or make one, and he also had previous knowledge of guilds from raiding that could help him get into a guild. I bring this up because if someone who is well known in the community, has a platform, and has previous experience with raids struggle to find a guild, imagine trying to find one as a player with none of these things, who may just be new to guilds entirely without any outside guidance and who isn't very involved in the Greater Wiz community on Discord. It sounds like it would be almost impossible, to be honest, if not very difficult. I was actually in that position as a newcomer to guilds back in June when I couldn't find a guild that was actively raiding using only in-game features when I was trying to. The first guild, or guilds rather, I joined were actually from content creators promoting their guilds in their live streams and their videos. I joined Val's guild, the Mystical Penguins, and Liam's guild, the Dauntless Goats. I found these guilds through their Discord servers because they were both advertising their guilds in their videos, and I watched both of them pretty regularly, so I applied to both. Joining Val's guild is actually what led me to joining Lizard Gang, who I also run Crying Sky with pretty regularly. I joined them through meeting someone who was a member of Penguins. The problem with finding guilds this way is that there are only so many creators that can make guilds, and there's a limited amount of space in each one. Going off of Val's roster that she has posted in her server, Penguins is almost at capacity. Liam is still looking to recruit for his guild from what I've heard, but that's bound to fill up as well. If I had not been active in the communities of these creators or didn't look towards the avenues of finding a guild other than just trying in game through asking around or using the social kiosk, I probably would have never even found a guild that did raids in the first place. I honestly think that KI should work on promoting guilds more and do actual partnerships with bigger guilds to promote them and maybe give them some incentive to be more open to newer raiders as well, so both the guild and the new raider get something out of it. I think that's something like an updated social kiosk, letting guilds opt in for certain raids, maybe making sections for each raid listing guilds who sign up for it, and giving them something for being open, and the kiosk would be a good start and could make finding a guild a whole lot easier. Next, I want to talk about the guild cooldown and the problem with that. The cooldown to join a guild is possibly the worst part about guilds, especially when there are so little players that are even actually ready to raid. It only serves to prevent new guilds from blossoming or succeeding. I remember I would sometimes raid with this guild that does Polaris, but I left the guild to do Crying Sky with another guild on my fire. They ran Polaris and had everyone sign up, but 1 hour into a 3-hour Polaris raid gate, someone just up and left and they couldn't recruit me because I was in cooldown. Nobody in their guild could make the raid, so it just ended there. If the cooldown hadn't been a thing, 2/3 of their raid key wouldn't have just been completely wasted. This isn't even an isolated incident of something like this happening. I've heard similar stories from other people as well. Other than just not being able to find a sub, there are also times where a guild just may not be a good fit for the player, whether it be toxicity, raiding times, or whatever barriers may be present for the player. If the player just leaves the guild, then they just be barred from raiding for the next 2 weeks. Even beyond incidents like that, there's a matter of even building up a roster in the first place where 12 adults can come together at the same time and raid for 9 minutes to 3 hours, especially where each member participating needs good setups like in Crying Sky. Not every guild is big enough to the point where they could just get substitutes at the drop of a hat, and the game needs to reflect that because if they want to make raids in any way accessible to the greater player base, barriers like a cooldown that can mess up a run even if they find someone from another guild willing to help are not acceptable. I really don't see how Radbeard is making the barrier of entry to PvP any better when the metagear is locked behind the hardest raid in the game, and starting a raid or even finding a guild in the first place can be really hard, even when you have people who are willing to help you raid, because many of them are on cooldown and can't join due to that. It seems to me that KI would rather have people whale on fairy packs instead of making the raid and guilds more accessible. Someone who I raid with pretty frequently actually had an idea of guilds being able to become allies with each other in game and being able to share their rosters of members. I don't think that KI would implement this, but I think it would definitely help smaller guilds be able to circumvent the cooldown a little bit, as cooldowns currently prevent members from outside guilds joining in to help. Now on to the next problem. There's also a problem of some guilds being very toxic and very unfriendly to beginning raiders. Luckily, I haven't experienced this, but there are many people I've talked to that have had negative experiences with raiding and people in their guilds flaming them for making mistakes as a beginner. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it's not frustrating to use a key and get into a run of Crying Sky and have someone have no idea what they're doing, but it's also not entirely their fault because KI does nothing to prepare people for advanced content at all, never mind Crying Sky, which is still the hardest content in the entire game. I think that KI should do an event to incentivize guilds to let new players in. Maybe there's a free key of a guild's choice once or twice a month so they could bring in new players into raiding with no Azoth investment, so resources wouldn't be wasted if new players sell runs. Raiding is a very stressful experience, especially if you have new players, and anything to lessen the investment guilds need to put into creating keys and raiding with new players would probably lessen the toxicity new players experience in their first runs. This kind of ties into my next point, which is about the source of guilds being toxic, players not being prepared or really knowing anything about Ro-Sham-Bo. KI has to do something to introduce players to Ro-Sham-Bo that is better than a Novus fight. As it stands right now, there's nothing in the main questline that is even comparable to the difficulty of Crying Sky, or even Polaris for that matter, unless you're only doing mob pulling in Polaris. Make mini raids that require less Azoth. Make little mob fights in your guild houses where you can pick the mob school and learn the basics of Ro-Sham-Bo. Make literally anything that is not an awful boss fight in Novus people hate with a burning passion because there's gear locks behind it. I was learning the myth gambits mid-raid. There should already be something available in-game to teach players that other than raids and peeve. Raids should be difficult, but there should be something to prepare players for that difficulty as opposed to just sticking them in a portal for 3 hours while they figure out a system that is completely different from the one that they were using for 170 levels before that point. Overall, I really do hope KingsIsle does something to fix these problems. Raiding in the game can be a very, very enjoyable experience, and it's given a very bad reputation because of the toxic side of raiding and the overall difficulty of raids themselves, but it doesn't have to be that way if KingsIsle actually implements things into Wiz to better prepare newcomers to raiding, and implements things to uplift smaller or less experienced guilds and help them being able to actually do raids consistently with as little issues as possible. I think that KI should partner with guilds and guild leadership to help them out with things, because if KI is going to be foregoing PvE updates for raids like they did in the most recent summer update, going to be talking about that in my next video, they should at least make raids more accessible to the PvE players that are taking resources away from to dedicate to raids. With all that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I want to hear what you all think in the comments below and want to know your own opinion on guilds and how they could be better. Consider leaving a like or a sub if you watched the video to the end, and have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.